Along with the Azerbaijani army fighting on the front during the 44-day patriotic war, Supreme Commander-in-Chief Mr. Ilham Aliyev conveyed Azerbaijan's rightful position to the world by fighting with determination and steadfastness in the information war. With his resolute approach as a victorious commander of the patriotic war, he sent messages to the enemy, as well as to anti-Azerbaijani foreign forces, confident that all obstacles on the way to victory would be overcome and the goal would be achieved. The speeches of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief were behind the morale given to the army and the people during the war. During the 44-day war, Mr. President gave interviews to 26 media outlets from 11 countries. The content of these interviews was based on the principles of international law, historical truth, and political realities. In his interviews, the head of state proved with indisputable evidence that the Azerbaijani side has demonstrated a peaceful stance for many years, and that the Armenian side has remained in a destructive position for years and exhausted the negotiation process. He also noted the illegal armament of Armenia, the presence of international terrorist hotbeds in Armenia and the occupied territories, the destruction of cultural monuments of Azerbaijan's historical heritage as a result of Armenian barbarism, illegal settlement in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, and sharply criticized the dual approach of the Western countries, especially the unfair and inadequate positions of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries, who are responsible for the peaceful settlement of the conflict. In his interviews, Mr. President clarified relations with neighboring and partner countries and voiced views on the prospects for future international cooperation. The head of state clarified relations with brotherly Turkey, which is our natural strategic ally, the United States, which is our strategic ally, Russia and Iran, which are our close neighbors in the region, as well as our regional ally neighboring Georgia. In the information war, the head of state exposed the pro-Armenian forces trying to confuse the international community and managed to inform and convince the world community, drawing attention to the realities. In his interviews with foreign media during the war, Supreme Commander-in-Chief Ilham Aliyev informed the international community that Azerbaijan had been working constructively and diplomatically for many years to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. However, he stressed that the other side did not respond adequately to this peaceful approach. Over the years, Armenia has deepened this problem by committing provocations against Azerbaijan on the front line. The president touched upon this issue on September 29, 2020, while answering questions in the 60 Minutes program of Rossiya 1 TV channel.
Вы знаете, Азербайджан всегда проявлял конструктивность на переговорном треке.
You know, Azerbaijan has always shown constructiveness on the negotiation track, and the Minsk Group co-chairs who are responsible for the mediation mission can confirm this. In particular, in the past 2 years, we have repeatedly stated, both myself and other officials, that we are committed to the resolution principles developed over the years, and which the Minsk Group and its co-chairs consider the basis for the negotiating process. Moreover, we have repeatedly stated in the past 2 years and before that, we are committed to the negotiation format. After the recent coup d'etat in Armenia, the processes revealed more clearly that the negotiation process, which had not yielded positive results for years, was over. With various statements and speeches, the new government demonstrated destructiveness, causing the conflict to escalate into a phase of war. In recent years, especially during Pashinyan's rule, the opposite side has been provoking the war. The head of state expressed this situation in an interview with the Rossiya 1 TV channel. Still, look at what has been happening in recent years after the Soros coup carried out by the current government in Armenia. The Armenian Prime Minister publicly declares that Karabakh is Armenia, full stop. In this case, what negotiations can we talk about? After all, the essence of the principles developed by the OSCE Minsk Group is that the territories around the former Nagorno-Karabakh autonomous region should be transferred to Azerbaijan. And then he says that Karabakh is Armenia and that we have to negotiate with the so-called puppet regime of Nagorno-Karabakh. As in previous interviews, in an interview with the Rossiya 1 TV channel, Mr. President said that there were only two sides of the Karabakh conflict, which has lasted for more than 30 years, and that the problem between aggressor Armenia and Azerbaijan, whose territorial integrity has been violated, is acute today, Mr. President told a Russian TV channel. Negotiations are underway between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There are only two sides to the conflict. Sometimes when talking about the conflict, there is a mention of all sides. It's an erroneous definition, not all sides. There are only two sides, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Pashinyan, who came to power through a revolution, announced that Karabakh is Armenia and that Armenia's aggressive policy will continue. Supreme Commander-in-Chief Mr. İlham Aliyev stated in an interview with CNN Turk TV channel on October 7, 2020, that this aggressive statement radically undermined the negotiation process. In addition, recently, the military political leadership of Armenia, both with aggressive actions and aggressive statements, disrupted the process of negotiations. In other words, it dealt a crushing blow to the talks. To say that Karabakh is Armenia essentially means an end to the negotiations, because the essence of the negotiations is that the occupied lands should be gradually and on a step-by-step basis returned to Azerbaijan. In his interviews, Mr. President exposed with irrefutable evidence that the Armenian side was preparing for war against Azerbaijan and planned to occupy new lands. A few days before the start of the war, we witnessed the head of state announcing these realities to the world from the international rostrum, the UN rostrum. Speaking in a video conference during the general debates of the 75th session of the UN General Assembly on September 24th, Mr. İlham Aliyev condemned the occupation of Azerbaijan's sovereign lands by Armenia, the vandalism of ethnic cleansing against our people, the illegal settlement by Armenians in violation of international conventions, the Armenian side's provocative actions on the front line and especially outside the line of contact, Armenia's open provocations against Azerbaijan, the deployment of terrorist groups in the occupied territories, attempts to involve third parties in the conflict, and Armenia's militaristic preparations for a new war in the region. Mr. President said this in an interview with Russia's RBK television. Moreover, we were expecting this attack. I spoke about this from the UN platform a few days before the escalation. You can see the text of my speech. I said that Armenia is preparing for war. Armenia must be stopped. There were many arguments in favor of that. First of all, the Armenian defense minister's statement he made in America last year, when he said that Armenia was preparing for a new war for new territories. Then Pashinyan's comments such as Karabakh is Armenia and so on. Further provocative actions in the form of Armenians' demonstrative settlement from Lebanon to Shusha, which is a war crime. Moreover, the Azerbaijani people's insult by holding the so-called swearing-in ceremony in Shusha, in fact for the first time in the entire existence of the occupation regime there, an attempt to move the parliament of the so-called Nagorno-Karabakh Republic from Khankendi to Shusha, and much more. All this was a provocation against us. Then came July, an unprovoked attack on military positions, and we lost 4 servicemen. Supreme Commander-in-Chief later voiced these views in an interview with Russia's Rossiya 1 TV channel. Not so long ago, speaking at the UN General Assembly, I openly said that Armenia was preparing for war, and it must be stopped. In July, they launched an armed attack on our settlements along the state border. It is far away from the conflict zone. 1 civilian and several servicemen were killed then. The clashes lasted 4 days. Since we did not have and still do not have any military targets across Armenia, as soon as the Armenian armed forces were driven back from our territory, the fire was ceased by mutual agreement. Then, as I said, a subversion group infiltrated our territory and was neutralized. Then the Armenian side publicly and defiantly announced the resettlement of Armenians from Lebanon to the occupied territories and to our ancient Azerbaijani city of Shusha, which amounts to a war crime. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention. It is done demonstratively. Before that, they held the so-called swearing-in ceremony for the so-called leader of the criminal Nagorno-Karabakh regime in Shusha, an ancient pearl of Azerbaijani culture. All these are deliberate provocations against us, attempts to drag us into conflict. In every interview, Supreme Commander-in-Chief fully stated that the operations of the Azerbaijani army on the front line were carried out in full compliance with the international legal system. He stated this rightful position of Azerbaijan in an interview with German ARD television on October 31, 2020.
International law and the whole international community recognizes Nagorno-Karabakh as integral part of Azerbaijan, and we are restoring justice, and we are implementing UN Security Council resolutions which were on paper for 27 years.
During that interview to German reporters' question, when we were there in this area, among us the question came up, why actually is Karabakh so important for Azerbaijan? I mean, is there a kind of resource or is it just symbolic? President replied,
Alsace and Lotharingia, is it important for you? Bavaria, is it important for you? Or Rhine-Westphalia? It's our land, our territory, internationally recognized. It's not a matter of resources. We have main resources here in Baku. It's a matter of justice, it's a matter of national pride, and it's a matter of international law.
With this, the head of state proved how high the moral values of the Azerbaijani people are. In an interview with the Italian La Repubblica newspaper, Mr. President said that our people have national honor and dignity, and the heroic spirit of our people has never faded throughout history. He stressed that our people have shown an example of perseverance and steadfastness in the chaotic and panic actions of Armenians against the Azerbaijani civilian population. The head of state said this in an interview with an Italian newspaper.
And also they wanted to create a chaos, a panic in Azerbaijan by attacking civilians, but they miscalculated the spirit of Azerbaijani people.
In his interviews, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief brought to the attention of the international community the fact that the enemy fired on civilian objects and settlements outside the military operation zone with prohibited weapons. He called ridiculous the denial of such facts by Armenian officials as a white lie, and stressed that it was unfortunate for the civilized world that these indisputable facts were sometimes ignored by Western circles. In particular, he criticized the unilateral actions of international NGOs, which from time to time were biased against Azerbaijan. In an interview with FA News Agency on November 5, 2020, President İlham Aliyev brought the Armenian barbarism to the attention of the international community.
What Armenia did, on the contrary, they launched the ballistic missiles from Armenian territory to Ganja, and it is proved. Though Armenian Prime Minister said it was not them, but it is ridiculous because ballistic missile launch is being monitored by the satellites. Everybody knows from where it was launched and what was the goal of that missile. It was deliberately hitting the civilian compounds in Ganja 2 times. They hit Barda 2 times with a very destructive Smerch missiles, and 21 person was killed and 70 wounded only by 1 attack. There have been many attacks. They attacked the funeral ceremony in Terter. That is absolutely beyond any norms of human behavior. When people were burying the person who died, they hit the cemetery and 4 people were killed. And the cluster bombs which they used have been verified by international media and NGOs.
In an interview with Fox News, the head of state expressed confidence that the civilian objects and the population of the opposite side were never targeted during the military operations, noting that the Azerbaijani side is experiencing it intensively.
We do not attack civilians. After Armenian brutal attack, act of terror against the city of Ganja with ballistic missiles where dozens of people have been killed, we publicly said that we will take revenge, but on the battlefield. We do not attack civilians, we do not attack religious sites. What happened to the church in Shusha was either a mistake, and I already publicly commented on that, or it was done by Armenians themselves in order to put a blame on us.
In his speeches, the head of state stressed that the enemy aimed to provoke the opposite side by treacherously firing on civilian objects and houses outside the war zone from the territory of Armenia, he told Haberturk. The reason for this treacherous attack by Armenia is that they are trying to expand the geography of this conflict and involve the Collective Security Treaty Organization of which they are a member. This is why they bombard Azerbaijani lands, civilians, and provoke us to retaliate. But as I said, our revenge will be on the battlefield. We never take any action against civilians. All our goals are military. In his interview, the president openly criticized the wartime activities of Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, which were biased against Azerbaijan.
And I'm sure that the first who reported about that were international media who visited them, and Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. They just didn't have any other option rather than to acknowledge that. But the question is why they didn't come in the first place to Azerbaijan. Why they were only working on Armenian side. Only after international media, Western media, showed those cluster bombs which Armenians use, then these two NGOs confirmed that. It is good that they did, but frankly speaking, I cannot imagine how they could not confirm it, because when it's obvious.
In an interview, the president of Azerbaijan openly criticized the ineffective work of the Minsk Group, which has been responsible for resolving the conflict for years, and the double standards of international forces and the UN on the principles of international law. In this regard, on October 2, 2020, in an interview with Al Jazeera TV channel, he expressed his critical position.
Minsk Group, which was created in order to facilitate to find a solution, already is in activity for 28 years and also without any result. Therefore, the main reason is, as I said, the position of Armenia. The second reason is that lack of insistence from the side of the mediators and lack of pressure on Armenia to start implementing resolutions of United Nations Security Council. On many occasions I raised this issue and was saying that international sanctions must be imposed on Armenia to force them to comply with resolutions and to start liberation of our territories.
In that interview, the head of state saw the reason for the protracted conflict in the non-implementation of UN resolutions.
There is not enough practical pressure on aggressor. And here we see the contradiction between international law and what is happening in reality. So such an open ignorance of the norms and principles of international law by Armenia should be a good indicator that international law doesn't work, or it works selectively. In some cases, as you know, Security Council resolutions are being implemented within days, if not hours. But in our case, it's on paper for so many years.
Mr. President criticized the indifference of international organizations to the policy of settlement in the Azerbaijani lands illegally occupied by Armenians. Unfortunately, no one ever reacted to this. The Minsk Group, the European Union or the UN. The destruction of Azerbaijan's historical heritage, the destruction of our cultural, historical and religious sites, the change of place names, the change of our region's administrative boundaries, the change of the names of our mountains, rivers and cities. The phrase "our work will be incomplete without Shusha" used by the president in an interview with the Turkish A Haber channel during the patriotic war defined Azerbaijan's resolute position and goals in this war. This expression was a moral blow to the enemy, the best news given to the Azerbaijani people. To the Turkish journalist's question, the heart of Karabakh, the apple of its eye is Shusha. The Azerbaijani people are waiting for news about Shusha. Inshallah, are you heading for Shusha? The Supreme Commander-in-Chief gave the perfect answer.
İstikamet her taraftir.
We are headed for all the territories. Every inch of the occupied lands, every city is dear to us. It's native for us. For me, all villages and cities are equally valuable. But you know very well that Shusha occupies a special place in the hearts of the Azerbaijani people. This is our historic city, a hotbed of ancient culture. Shusha gave the Azerbaijani people many very talented and outstanding personalities. Of course, without Shusha, our mission will be half done. Naturally, this issue has always been on the agenda in the course of discussions. You know, there were many questions at the negotiating table in the previous period. Some suggestions were that Azerbaijan should get back 5 districts and be content with that, while the rest should stay with the Armenians. In other words, we were told that we want everything at once, but this can't happen, and that there must be a compromise and so on. But I never agreed to that. It would be completely wrong to get 5 districts and leave the rest for later indefinitely. Therefore, at different stages, mediators and some international organizations wondered why Ilham Aliyev did not agree to this. We are telling him that 5 districts are being returned now. Although Armenia, as it turns out now, did not want to return these 5 districts either, but there have been such proposals. However, my position has always been that without Shusha, our mission would be half done. Therefore, of course, the liberation of Shusha occupies a special place among our goals. In his wartime interviews with foreign media, President Ilham Aliyev proved the Turkish-Azerbaijani brotherhood and mutual cooperation based on natural interest with his consistent views. Through interviews, he defined the future horizons of Turkish-Azerbaijani natural strategic cooperation. Sometimes he once again showed a fanatical position as a defender of the Turkish-Azerbaijani natural alliance, giving appropriate and logical answers to provocative questions of a foreign media representative trying to portray Turkey's negative image in the war. On September 29, 2020, on Russia's Rossiya 1 TV channel's program, Mr. President replied to a reporter's question about Turkey's role in the war.
Роль Турции, я считаю, что носит стабилизирующий характер в регионе.
I believe that Turkey is playing a stabilizing role in the region. Turkey is our brotherly country and our ally. From the very first hour, once the international community learned that Armenia attacked Azerbaijan, Turkey spoke out unequivocally at the level of the head of state and other leaders in support of Azerbaijan, in support of international law. Armenia has grossly violated international law by occupying the territory of Azerbaijan for about 30 years. So that is Turkey's role, nothing else. Turkey provides us with moral support, and we are grateful to the Turkish leadership, the president, and the Turkish people for their solidarity and support. Turkey does not participate in this conflict in any other capacity. All the rumors that Turkey is involved as a party to the conflict circulated by the Armenian side are provocative. As they say now, this is fake news. There is no evidence of Turkey's involvement in the conflict, and nor is that necessary. On October 14, 2020, the head of state responded to a question from a correspondent of the France 24 TV channel about Turkey's direct participation in the war.
Turkish military involvement is another fake news. There is no military involvement of Turkey. We are using Turkish military equipment, this is true, but we are using military equipment of Russia, military equipment of Israel, military equipment of other countries. And we buy this military equipment, unlike Armenia, which gets it free of charge. Turkey is in no way, other than political, is present in the process.
In an interview with CNN International's Connect the World program, the president gave a more concise and decisive answer. Yes, there is Turkish equipment. There are no Turkish forces. In an interview with the Turkish A Haber TV channel, he said, "The false information invented by the Prime Minister of Armenia is intended to mislead the international community. Of course, we receive only moral and political support from Turkey, Pakistan, and other fraternal countries." In an interview with the Turkish TRT Haber TV channel on October 5, 2020, the head of state, referring to the Turkish-Azerbaijani friendship, said that our brotherhood is eternal, and our brotherhood has stood the test of time. You know that the relations between Turkey and Azerbaijan are an example for the whole world. I have repeatedly spoken about this. I have often said at joint press conferences with my dear brother Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan that there are no other countries in the world as close to each other as Turkey and Azerbaijan. And these are not empty words. These are heartfelt sentiments. Our unity is based on our history, our common ethnic roots, language, religion, and brotherhood. The historic service of my dear brother Tayyip Bey and myself is that we have created a modern Turkish-Azerbaijani union on a very solid foundation. Turkish flags have been present everywhere already in Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijani flags are everywhere in Turkey. We are not separate from each other, we are together. These events have once again shown that Turkey was the first to support us unequivocally and decisively. The Turkish president's very bold and resolute statements were a warning to many countries countries. Stay away, do not interfere. Azerbaijan is not alone, Turkey is next to it, and Azerbaijan is always with Turkey. We support each other in all matters, across all platforms, and our unity must last forever.
Bütün kürsülerden biz birbirimizi destekleyirik ve bizim birliğimiz ebedi olmalıdır.
To the question of the CNN Turk TV channel's correspondent, wherever we were in Baku or cities in the conflict zone in Tatar, we saw the flags of Turkey everywhere, next to the flags of Azerbaijan. What would you like to say about this? The president replied.
Bu aslında her zaman böyleydi. Çünkü Türkiye bizim için
In fact, it has always been this way, because Turkey is not only an ally and the closest country for us. Turkey is a fraternal country for us, just like Azerbaijan is for Turkey. The flag of Turkey is a native flag for us, as native as the flag of Azerbaijan. This answer was another acknowledgement of victorious Supreme Commander-in-Chief İlham Aliyev's love for the brotherly country. In an interview with the Turkish Habertürk TV channel on October 13th, answering questions about the full settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, the head of state touched upon the issue of Turkey's place and role here and expressed his firm and principled position. This issue cannot be resolved without Turkey's participation here. Everyone should understand that, he reiterated in the same interview. Who can say that Turkey is not in the process? If there is no Turkey, then why are you saying this? Turkey is there and will do everything possible to keep it this way, because this issue cannot be resolved without Turkey's participation. Everyone should understand this. The unity of Turkey and Azerbaijan brings stability and peace to the region, because our intention is to secure our interests. Turkey plays a very important stabilizing role in the region and in the new geography today. In an interview with Turkish NTV television on 15 October, Mr. President reiterated his firm position on Turkey's future participation in the post-war peacekeeping mission by saying that, "Therefore, our position is that Turkey must be there. The status is already a technical question. De facto, Turkey is already present. Turkey must and I'm sure will play an active role in this issue."
ümid edirik ki tez bir zamanda masa arkasında bu mesele çözülsün ve Türkiye mutlaka bu işlerde faal rol oynamalıdır ve eminim ki oynayacaktır.
In an interview with Russia's RBK television channel on October 10th, President İlham Aliyev once again touched on the position of brotherly Turkey and expressed this role openly and decisively. The active and unequivocal position of the Turkish leadership, personally its president and other officials during the escalation, essentially prevented third countries' intervention in this conflict. Therefore, I believe that Turkey's role is extremely positive, and it should play an even more significant role in our region, including the settlement of the conflict.
Поэтому я считаю, что роль Турции исключительно позитивная.
In an interview with BBC News on 9th of November, during the war, to the question of journalists, we have seen that Armenia has already gone to Russia and said, "What are you prepared to do? Do you see a day when you would be asking Turkey to become more involved?" We witnessed the sharp, principled answer of the country's leader.
I don't want to look too far ahead because it will depend on the situation on the battlefield. It will depend on Armenia's behavior and on other countries' behavior, because on many occasions I said that we're against internationalization of the conflict. We asked all the countries, neighboring countries and not neighboring countries, to stay away from this conflict. We are fighting on our land, internationally recognized. So this is our position. And I think that what is happening now will continue, so there will be no need for any kind of military involvement of Turkey. But with Turkey, many years ago, we signed a document which provides also military support in case of aggression. So we have more or less the same format, a legal basis like Armenia and Russia have with Turkey. So if Azerbaijan will face an aggression, and if Azerbaijan will see that the Turkish military support is needed, then we will consider this option.
In the interviews, the head of state expressed Azerbaijan's wise political position, touching on the prospects of cooperation with neighboring and partner countries both during the war and in the post-war period. In addition to sending a message of gratitude to the countries that supported Azerbaijan's just position in this war, he openly condemned the countries and forces that unjustly defended Armenia or indirectly supported the enemy front based on a unilateral position without compromising on justice. In his interview during the war against the statements of French President Emmanuel Macron that Azerbaijan together with Turkey brought terrorists to the region and Azerbaijan wants to conquer Nagorno-Karabakh and we will not allow it, Mr. Ilham Aliyev reaffirmed his position and reiterated Azerbaijan's just position to the world community. In an interview with TRT Haber on October 5, 2020, the president said in response to this absurd statement of the French president that Nagorno-Karabakh is our land. How can one conquer its own lands? Doesn't the co-chair country know that the Armenians have illegally settled in these lands and destroyed all our historical sites, mosques and graves and razed our houses to the ground? Look at the images of Agdam and Fizuli. They keep pigs and cows in our half-destroyed mosques. This is an insult to all Muslims. Don't they see it? Therefore, the words Azerbaijan wants to conquer Nagorno-Karabakh and we will not allow that are unacceptable. This is why France is already excluding itself from this equal trio. We cannot remain silent.
Ve biz buna sessiz kalamayız.
The head of state's response to the Turkish reporter's statement, "You invited French President Macron to apologize," was even bolder. Yes, of course, because he accused us. He threw things at us that weren't true. This is unacceptable for our country. Criticizing the unfair support of the French government to the Armenian side in an interview with CNN International on Connect the World program, the head of state stated the indisputable facts.
French foreign minister is not concerned about Russia supporting Armenia with weapons free of charge. And he does not think that it is internationalization of the conflict. But when Turkey expresses legitimate political support, it becomes a concern. And I, frankly speaking, cannot understand that how one NATO country can act in such a way against another NATO country.
The president categorically denied that mercenaries and terrorists were fighting on the Azerbaijani side, saying it was nonsense. In an interview with Russia's TASS news agency, he denied all these biased and baseless allegations, saying when it comes to terrorists, these are all baseless words. In an interview with the Turkish Habertürk TV channel, he revealed the following evidence of the involvement of terrorists and mercenaries. Besides, as for the participation of foreign citizens, let them look at Armenia and see how many terrorists there are there. There are PKK camps there. They also exist in Nagorno-Karabakh. After the liberation of this region from the invaders, we will destroy these camps too. So many foreigners are taking part in these battles against us today. The terrorists killed there have passports of Canada and Lebanon. Whether they are of Armenian origin or not is another matter. A citizen of another country has come here and is fighting against us. They are mercenaries. On October 26, the head of state again openly answered the question of the correspondent of the Italian Rai 1 TV channel against these baseless allegations. First, such unfounded accusations were brought against us by only two countries, France and Russia. France said that through the president, Russia through the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service. These charges were brought against us immediately after the outbreak of hostilities. Although almost a month has already passed, not a single piece of evidence, no proof was presented to us. For the first time, I will say this. I asked the French side for the heads of relevant agencies to meet, discuss the issue, and provide us with evidence. Nothing was presented to us, therefore these are all insinuations. All this is an attempt to cast a shadow on Azerbaijan. I regret that such unfounded accusations come from the co-chair countries which are supposed to be objective. Also, during his interview, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief voiced compelling facts against the allegations made by some Russian authorities, as well as the French president against Azerbaijan about the involvement of mercenaries and the Turkish military in this war. We do not talk every day about how many weapons are supplied from Russia to Armenia. We do not mention the fact that Armenia would not have lasted a day in the occupied territories without external assistance. Political support, military support, moral support, all these comes from countries that are supposed to stay neutral. Therefore, we strongly reject these insinuations. This is not necessary. We have 100,000 soldiers in the regular army. If necessary, we will announce general mobilization, which, by the way, we have not done, unlike Armenia. Therefore, this is all lies and slander. As for the participation of Turkish troops in operations, this is another lie. There is not a single piece of evidence. The Turkish F-16s are in Azerbaijan due to our joint military exercises on the eve of the conflict. We do not talk about the number of Russian MiG-29s and Su-30s are in Armenia. We do not talk about the fact that 5,000 Russian troops are stationed at the base in Armenia in Gyumri. According to our data, there are periodic weapons supplies of the Armenian armed forces from there. These are facts in contrast to what is being said about us. Therefore, I suggest that those who want to accuse us should first deal with their matters before jumping to such hasty conclusions based on false information.
А после этого делать такие скоропалительные выводы, основанные на ложной информации.
On November 5th, to the question of the correspondent of the Spanish FN news agency who asked Russia, Mr. Lavrov said yesterday there are nearly 2,000 mercenaries battling or combating in Nagorno-Karabakh. What do you say regarding this? We witnessed the president's bold and fluent answer.
I answered many times to these accusations, these groundless accusations, and I frankly speaking regret that the high-ranking officials of the countries which are supposed to be neutral, which are supposed to be acting within their mandate, which was given to them by OSCE, use this, unverified, groundless, so-called information and rumors. So first. Second, we don't have any mercenaries. Many times I said about that. We don't need them. We have army of 100,000 fighters. We can recruit several times more if we announce total mobilization, which we don't do, unlike what Armenia did. There is no evidence of any foreign fighters fighting on our side. No evidence during this time since more than 1 month. Not a single document, not a single proof was given to us, only statements.
In an October 19th interview with Russia's TASS news agency, the president openly sent a message to both the opposite side and the international community about who and from where illegally and intensively weapons were sent to Armenia during the war. During the interview, he expressed great regret that such cases were sent by the parties involved in the peaceful settlement of the conflict for many years. Mr. President made this clear with this statement. Not a single country is involved in the conflict on our side. There are no terrorists on our side. As for the opposite side, the Armenian side, we have conveyed to the Russian side our concerns that during the active phase of the confrontation, a huge amount of weapons has been transferred from Russian cities to the territory of Armenia. We have data, we have flight maps, we have the listing of weapons. All this was brought to the attention of the Russian side. This, of course, raises a lot of questions and bewilderment in our society. Therefore, the situation is like this. If necessary, we can also publish the list of supplies Armenia has received from Russia during this time, specify what transport vehicles were used to deliver them, and which airlines delivered them. These were mostly illegal supplies. We have officially applied to ICAO. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan has appealed to ICAO. We have provided information about the transport vessels of certain companies. In fact, there have also been media reports that lethal weapons are being delivered to Armenia under the guise of humanitarian cargo and cargo of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. Since both Georgia and Iran have closed their airspace for military cargo, such smuggling methods are used. We suggested to the Russian side that this was being done by means of smuggling because it's hard for us to believe that Russia, a co-chair of the OSCE Minsk Group and a country that must maintain neutrality just like France and the United States, is arming the Armenian side during the active phase of the conflict. According to our information, large Russian entrepreneurs of Armenian origin are involved in this scheme. Well-known arms dealers who are under international sanctions are also involved. Our appeal to the Russian side was, among other things, aimed at sorting out this issue. Because if Russian weapons are smuggled and paid for in cash, then we need to figure out how this can be possible. These are the concerns we have, and our concerns are based on facts. He also called on the civilized world to intensify joint efforts to combat international arms smuggling. In his interview, Supreme Commander-in-Chief Ilham Aliyev expressed his gratitude to neighboring and partner countries for providing political support to Azerbaijan during the war and identified prospects for future cooperation in interstate relations. Asked by a TRT Haber reporter about Pakistan's and Russia's stance on the war, the president said,
Fırsattan istifade ederek diğer bizim dost kardeş ülkelere de teşekkürümü bildirmek istedim.
I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to all other friendly and brotherly countries. After Turkey, the second country that supported us was Pakistan, followed by Afghanistan, and then several other countries. I thank each of them, the presidents of those countries. In this challenging period, their solidarity and support are essential for us and give us moral strength. Russia is our neighbor. Our relations with Russia are developing successfully. Today, the ties between Russia and Azerbaijan are at a very high level in many areas. Both countries view this relationship as a strategic partnership, which is confirmed by the joint agreements. Russia acts as a large and a very responsible country. Positive messages are coming from Russia, and support for any party is not an issue. He also exposed Armenia's intention to involve Russia in the conflict by committing provocative actions both before and during the war, and stated unequivocally that these intentions of Armenia will never come true. In an interview with TRT Haber, he said, however, Armenia had high hopes for that. Armenia's goal in taking the conflict out of the region is to engage Russia. Why is Armenia currently attacking Azerbaijan from the territory of Armenia? Exactly to make a strike back so that they could appeal to the General Secretariat of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. They are a member together with Russia and other countries, and say that Azerbaijan is attacking, come and help us. Why did they commit that provocation on the Armenia-Azerbaijan border this July? Tauz is located far from the Karabakh region. What goals did they have there? One goal was to make us launch an attack, cross the border. As I said, we had such an opportunity, and then ask the organization to come and fight with us against Azerbaijan. In other words, they want to involve Russia in this. It is yet another provocation, and I'm sure it will fail.
Yani Rusya'nı bu işlere celbetmek istəyir və bu növbəti provokasyondur və mən əminəm ki, buna müvəffəq olmayacaq.
In his interviews, Mr. President sometimes exposed and sharply criticized pro-Armenian circles, along with the French government, which mainly supported Armenia's policy of aggression. He openly and boldly condemned Russia, especially the forces from Russia that supported the enemy in various ways, and some circles of power. He noted that the end of the conflict, which has been unresolved for years, depends on Russia's political will. In particular, he expressed such courageous views in an interview with Russia's RBK television channel. Consequently, we have repeatedly appealed to the Russian leadership to engage the levers of political influence on Armenia and urge the Armenian side to end the occupation. This topic has been discussed many times. I can tell you that in all of the numerous meetings I have had with my Russian colleague, this topic was discussed in one form or another, either in detail or not very extensively, but this did not happen. It's no secret that Armenia entirely depends on Russia today. Russia provides security. Russia provides free weapons. We have destroyed Armenian hardware, probably worth billions of dollars. Right now, in a matter of 2 weeks, where did they get this money? money. They don't have it. These are all free deliveries from Russia, gas supply at preferential prices from Russia, electricity to some extent too, railways, communications, a military base. Russian border troops guard even the Armenian border with Turkey and Iran. If it weren't for this, it would be empty. What other country has so many levers to influence Armenia? None. And there are probably no other two countries in the world, one of which will be so utterly dependent on the other. Therefore, of course, I'm convinced that if there is persistence on Russia's part, given that we have changed the status quo, broken the line of contact and brought Yerevan to its senses, I think that Russia certainly has many tools to quickly convince Armenia that the only way out of this situation, and not only in terms of military confrontation, but also for the future of Armenia in general, is to find a solution together with Azerbaijan. In response to Russian journalist's question, when I walked around Baku, I saw a lot of Azerbaijani flags and slightly fewer but still quite many Turkish flags, but I did not see a single Russian flag. Does this mean that Russia's influence in Azerbaijan has decreased, or has the attitude of people in Azerbaijan changed towards Russia? Based on a logical and objective approach, the head of state said. When the Azerbaijani people are insulted, when the president of Azerbaijan is insulted on leading Russian channels, this of course doesn't add credibility to Russia. I brought this issue to the attention of the Russian leadership, not in terms of the fact that we are concerned about it. The Azerbaijani society and public opinion are shaped within Azerbaijan, but this may someday lead to certain difficulties in our plans. We have projects with Russia for the future development of cooperation. We are now actively working on 5 roadmaps for economic and other cooperation. But the information attack we encountered in the Russian media during this time of course caused great harm to the public perception of Russia. I think it will take time and effort to the leadership of both sides to rectify this situation.
Я думаю, понадобится время и усилия руководства обоих сторон, чтобы эту ситуацию выправить.
In response to the question of Al Jazeera television channel's correspondent, is Russian mediation acceptable for Azerbaijan in this political stalemate, the president clarified Russia's role in resolving the conflict, as well as conveyed a message to the other side by saying, if you are a mediator, you must be neutral, you must be a mediator. As I mentioned, the president not only commented on the attitudes and actions of countries such as Turkey, Russia and France, which were sensitive during the war, but also clarified the positions of global powers such as the United States and neighboring Iran and Georgia. In an interview with CNN Turkey, he expressed Iran's attitude to the conflict as follows.
İran rəsmiləri Azərbaycanın haqq işini dəstəklədi.
Iranian officials have supported Azerbaijan's just cause. A few days ago, Iranian officials said that the occupation must be stopped, the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan must be restored, and our IDPs must return to their native lands. This is a fair position.
Bizim qaçqınlarımız, mültəcilər öz torpaqlarına qayıtmalıdırlar. Bu da ədalətli mövqedir.
In response to the French Le Figaro newspaper, reporters question how is your relationship currently with Georgia, who is another Christian nation in the Caucasus region, the president clarified it as follows.
With Georgia, our relations are excellent. We call each other strategic partners. Azerbaijan is first or second largest investor in Georgia and first or second largest taxpayer. I'm saying first and second because one year it's Turkey, another year it's Azerbaijan. And we have a trilateral format of cooperation between Turkey, Georgia and Azerbaijan. We had presidential summits, ministerial meetings, including defense ministers, foreign ministers, economic ministers. We have all our major transportation and energy communication going through Georgia. We have a big Azerbaijani community in Georgia, close to 300,000 people. Therefore, relations are excellent, and I think could be a good example. Like our relations with Turkey, our relations with Georgia, they are good examples of good neighborhood. And by the way, the fact that Georgia is Christian, Azerbaijan is Muslim, doesn't make any difference. We don't look at this region from this point of view.
In an interview with Fox News, the head of state expressed a more detailed attitude to relations with the United States.
I would say that Azerbaijan has always been a very true partner to United States. We are together on the fight against international terrorism. We are together in Afghanistan, and we keep our military servicemen in Afghanistan, thus providing the cost of our peacekeeping operations. We have important topic on our agenda as energy security. United States always strongly supported Azerbaijan's efforts to diversify its energy supply routes, and with the strong support of United States, we managed to complete important projects. Azerbaijan and United States have a very strong partnership relations, and United States considers Azerbaijan as a friend, and we are really friends. Therefore, it's in the interest of United States that there is a peace here, and Azerbaijan continues its path on the route of independence, strengthening the independence.
In an interview with RBK, Mr. President said that among the many provocations committed by the Armenian side in the escalation of the conflict to the level of war, citing the facts of illegal settlement in the occupied territories. Illegal settlement, this is an international crime, a violation of the Geneva Conventions. Asked by a US Fox News correspondent about Azerbaijan's failure in the battles with the Armenian side in the early 1990s, Mr. President said,
"We did not lose the war, we lost the battle. That was due to objective reasons. First, there was an internal instability in Azerbaijan. Armenia took advantage of that.
This answer was based on a more complete and accurate logic. One of the highlights of Mr. President's interviews was the fact-based principled position against the Armenian side's must-voiced claims of self-determination of the peoples during this conflict. The head of state said the following in an interview with Al Jazeera.
But if we go back to UN Charter, if we go back to Helsinki Final Act, we'll see that self-determination should not damage territorial integrity of the countries. Another important point, the territorial integrity of the country cannot be changed by force and cannot be changed without an agreement of the people of the country. Therefore, in this case of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, of course, self-determination is not working the way how Armenians want to do it. And another argument, Armenian people already self-determinated themselves. They have independent Armenian state. Today Armenians live everywhere. They live in France, they live in America, they live in Russia, they live in Middle East. Let them ask for self-determination in those countries. What would be reaction of authorities of those countries if Armenians would ask the land which does not belong to them and ask this land only because they now became majority? Those countries which want to give self-determination to Nagorno-Karabakh, let them give part of their land to Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, take them and give self-determination there. I would see what would be their reaction.
In response to Japanese Nikkei newspaper reporter's question after the return of Nagorno-Karabakh, will you respect their right to self-determination as stated in the Madrid Principles, and will you agree to a referendum? The answer of the president was more decisive.
No, of course not. There will be no referendum. In Nagorno-Karabakh, we will never agree on that. We did not agree on that during the time of negotiations, and now, when we regained a big part of the territory, it is out of question.
In response to the question of the Sky News correspondent on October 9, 2020, if 25% of the Azerbaijani population is allowed to return to Nagorno-Karabakh, will you recognize the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh? The president gave a decisive answer.
No, never. And that has never been the issue on negotiation table. Our position was very clear that Azerbaijan will never recognize Nagorno-Karabakh independence.
In an interview with BBC News, Mr. President reiterated this issue as a concrete result.
Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan. It will be part of Azerbaijan as any other region of Azerbaijan. It will depend, again, on what will be Armenian government behavior. It is still not too late for them to be reasonable. It is still not too late for them to get more on the negotiation table. Because after we take control of other cities and villages, there will be nothing to talk about. So they're losing time. And if they behave reasonably, we can work on some forms of self-governance. We are not against it, but they should not violate territorial integrity of Azerbaijan.
Mr. President clarified the status quo, one of the most used terms for more than 30 years. In an interview with Turkish Al Haber TV, he assessed the issue as follows.
Statü quo artık yoktu. Ben bu hakta sözlerimi dedim ve bu reallık.
The status quo is gone. I have already spoken about this and this is a reality. What was the status quo? It meant the preservation of lands under occupation. And this was despite the fact that 10 years ago the Minsk Group co-chairs made a very positive statement on this matter. It said that the status quo was unacceptable, but no tangible steps were taken afterwards. We have been waiting for a change in the status quo for 30 years to achieve this through negotiations, but that did not happen. Therefore, we destroyed it on the battlefield. In an interview with Turkish Haber Global Television, the head of state expressed this issue more harshly and decisively. Azerbaijan changed the status quo itself on the battlefield. The status quo is gone. The settlements and villages of Agdara, Fizuli, Cebrail, Hadrut have already been liberated. What status quo can we talk about now? None. Line of contact? It's gone. One of the most important points in Mr. President's wartime interviews was answering questions about the future of the region, the prospects of Azerbaijani-Armenian relations, the future coexistence and reconciliation of the Azerbaijani and Armenian peoples, the fate of Armenians living in Karabakh, demonstrating that Azerbaijan is a tolerant country with high moral qualities. In an interview with TRT Haber, the President said about the future relations between the two nations, "I hope that our peoples will be reconciled after the end of this aggressive policy." Clarifying the fate of the Armenians of Karabakh in an interview with Sky News, the head of state stressed.
People of Armenian origin in Nagorno-Karabakh, they are hostages of a criminal regime which is there. They will, I'm sure, live side by side with us in peace and dignity after the war is over.
In an interview with the Nikkei newspaper, the president reaffirmed these views. Those Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh are our citizens. Their security and rights will be fully ensured like the rights of other people in Azerbaijan. He also told the Nikkei newspaper that Armenia, which supports separatism, threatens the territorial integrity of states, incites international hostility and turns terrorism into a state policy, has no future as a state.
And I hope to see the time when three countries of the Southern Caucasus will have cooperation. And without normalization of relations with Turkey and with Azerbaijan, Armenia has no future.
In an interview with the Turkish Haber Global TV channel, the head of state conveyed Azerbaijan's resolute position and goals in military operations to the enemy and the international community as follows. Those who tell us to stop should know well we cannot stop. We do not want bloodshed either. But after that, a political process must begin. If the political process doesn't start, we will not stop. I said that we would go all the way to the end, but how? In military or political ways? This is another question. We want the military stage to end so that no blood is shed. There are no martyrs and we liberate our lands peacefully.
Hərbi yolla yaxud da ki siyasi yolla o başqa məsələ. Biz istəyirik ki, hərbi mərhələ dursun, qan tökülməsin, şəhidlər olmasın və barışçıl yollarla öz torpaqlarımızı bərpa edək.
We have witnessed the Supreme Commander-in-Chief expressing optimism about the future of the Armenian community after the war, as well as the future of the liberated territories. In an interview with the Turkish Haber Global TV channel, he said that the liberated territories, which was the victim of Armenian vandalism, would soon become a paradise.
Biz orada şəhərlər quracağıq, biz orada həyatı qaytaracağıq.
We will build not only roofs there, we will build entire cities, we will return life to these places. We must turn all this land into paradise. The nature there is already like paradise, and even though these lands were under the heel of the Armenians for many years, they will be reborn. Life, children's laughter and people's smiles will return there. The citizens of Azerbaijan will live on these lands with dignity. Thus, the logical burden of the 44-day war ended with the statement of our Supreme Commander-in-Chief, President İlham Aliyev, in an interview with Habertürk TV channel. They wanted to enter our territory and occupy new lands, but they suffered the consequences. As Mr. President once said, Karabakh is Azerbaijan, and an exclamation mark became a reality with the 44-day patriotic war and ended with the logical word, victory belongs to Azerbaijan.
Əziz Şuşa, sən azadsan. Əziz Şuşa, biz qayıtmışıq. Əziz Şuşa, biz səni dirçəldəcəyik. Şuşa bizimdir. Qarabağ bizimdir. Qarabağ Azərbaycandır.